So this is one of the most influential machine guns ever created. For over 8 decades, the design principles of the MG34 have shaped every general-purpose machine gun on the planet. Military historians still marvel at its revolutionary features, while veterans who faced it describe sleepless nights filled with its distinctive ripping sound. The MG34 makes people wonder how one weapon could so completely redefine infantry warfare while simultaneously becoming a nightmare for the soldiers forced to operate it. But why did this happen? How did Germany's wonder weapon become both a tactical masterpiece and an operational curse? You might be surprised to hear that its story goes all the way back to the humiliating restrictions of the Treaty of Versailles. So, where does the story actually begin? The story begins in the muddy trenches of World War I, where Germany learned a brutal lesson about sustained firepower. The German army relied primarily on the MG08, a water-cooled behemoth weighing over 60 pounds without its sled mount. It required a crew of 4 to 6 men just to move it. The MG08 excelled in static defensive positions, but modern warfare demanded mobility. The Treaty of Versailles in 1919 changed everything. Germany was forbidden from developing weapons above certain calibers and was limited in military size. If you couldn't have more soldiers, each soldier needed to project more firepower. This constraint became the mother of innovation. Throughout the 1920s, German engineers worked in secret to develop new weapon concepts. They experimented with lighter machine gun designs, but these early versions didn't work out. The Dries model 1918 proved unreliable and still too heavy for truly mobile warfare. What Germany needed was something that had never existed, a single weapon serving as both a light machine gun and a heavy sustained fire weapon. Then the Germans got their hands on captured weapons from around the world. They studied the Lewis gun, the Chauchat, and the Browning automatic rifle. Each had advantages, but each was fundamentally limited. The real influence came when German engineers examined Swiss Solothurn designs and combined those concepts with their own innovations. In 1930, the German Reichswehr secretly commissioned Rheinmetall Borsig to develop a universal machine gun. The lead designer was Heinrich Vollmer, a brilliant firearms engineer. To give you a quick rundown, they were essentially asking for 3 different weapons in one package: air-cooled to save weight, quick change barrel, belt or magazine-fed, and accurate at extended ranges. By 1934, the design was complete. That's when they came up with the MG34, the world's first true general-purpose machine gun that would fundamentally change infantry tactics for every nation on Earth. Now, instead of chasing simplicity, Vollmer's team created one of the most sophisticated and complex machine guns ever fielded. The MG34 was a marvel of precision engineering with close tolerances and beautifully finished parts. But as soldiers would discover, this sophistication came with a terrible operational price. The MG34 measured 48 inches long and weighed 26.7 pounds unloaded. Chambered in 7.92 by 5.7 millimeter Mauser, it fired between 800 and 900 rounds per minute from 50 round belt segments or 75 round drum magazines. Just look at the difference between this and the MG08, nearly 40 pounds lighter. Here is an explanation in case you ever wondered how it works. The weapon operates on a short recoil action with a rotating bolt. When you pull the trigger, the cartridge ignites and the bullet reaches velocities of 2,475 feet per second. As the bullet travels down the barrel and bolt recoil backward, locked together. A cam surface forces the bolt to rotate and unlock. The barrel stops, but the bolt continues rearward, ejecting the spent case. A recoil spring drives the bolt forward, stripping a new round from the belt, and the cycle repeats 13 to 15 times per second. The quick change barrel system was revolutionary. A receiver latch released the barrel, allowing removal in under 5 seconds. This was critical because continuous firing heated the barrel to over 800 degrees Fahrenheit within 250 rounds. You could literally watch the barrel glow red in darkness. Doctrine called for changing every 250 rounds during sustained fire. The weapon featured an adjustable trigger. Pull the first stage for single shots. Pull through for full automatic. The sights adjusted from 200 to 2,000 meters, though effective range was closer to 800 meters with bipod, 1,200 with tripod. Firstly, we have standard 7.9 2x5 7mm infantry ball ammunition, producing 3,304 joules of muzzle energy. Then there are armor-piercing rounds capable of penetrating 15 millimeters of steel at 100 meters. And then there are tracer rounds, typically loaded one per every 4 or 5 standard rounds to help gunners observe their fire. The MG34 officially entered service with the Wehrmacht in 1936. By 1939, approximately 50,000 units had been produced. When World War II erupted on September 1, 1939, Allied troops quickly learned to fear it. The Polish campaign revealed the MG34's devastating effectiveness in mobile warfare. German infantry squads were built around the MG34 as their primary weapon. The riflemen existed to support the machine gun, not the other way around. This revolutionary doctrine stunned Polish forces still organized around rifle-centric tactics. The effect on concentrated infantry formations was devastating. The MG34's high rate of fire meant it could sweep an area with a density of fire that felt almost like artillery. One gun could suppress an entire platoon. At 200 meters, the rounds would easily penetrate sandbags, light wooden structures, and even some masonry. Soldiers who survived described the sound as a distinctive ripping noise. You could identify an MG34 by sound alone. During the invasion of France in May 1940, the MG34 proved equally effective. At the Battle of Arras, German machine gun positions devastated British counterattacks. The gun's ability to quickly transition from sustained fire on the tripod to mobile fire on the bipod allowed German units to defend and then immediately pursue. The Soviets were frustrated that the MG34 outranged and outperformed their Degtyarev DP-27 by significant margins. The DP-27 fired only 550 rounds per minute from 47 round-pan magazines. By contrast, German MG-34 teams could lay down sustained fire from belts holding hundreds of rounds, dominating the firefight. Soviet infantry tactics evolved to emphasize massed attacks, accepting horrific casualties to overwhelm German positions. Then came North Africa, where the MG-34 faced its first serious operational challenges, not from enemy fire, but from the environment itself. As combat experience accumulated, the Wehrmacht made incremental modifications. The MG-34 and MG-41, introduced in limited numbers in 1941, increased the rate of fire to an astonishing 1,200 rounds per minute. However, this excessive fire rate caused faster barrel wear and even more frequent changes, making it impractical. The most common variant was the MG34S, a tank version with heavier barrels to handle increased heat from armored fighting compartments. These featured different sights optimized for vehicle mounting. But this wouldn't be complete without mentioning the truly excessive variants. The drilling MG34 mounted 3 MG34s together on a single mount for anti-aircraft use, throwing 2,400 rounds per minute into the sky. The ammunition consumption was staggering. A 5-second burst would expend 200 rounds. Then there were vehicle-mounted quad configurations on armored reconnaissance vehicles. When one wasn't enough, German engineers simply multiplied the problem. 4 MG34s firing simultaneously created such an intense volume of fire that it could saw through light structures. These systems saw limited use. 3,200 rounds per minute meant an entire combat load would be exhausted in less than 30 seconds. Initially, Allied forces had no effective infantry-level counter to the MG34's dominance. The weapon's combination of high rate of fire, long range, and accuracy meant German positions could control vast areas of terrain. British and American forces learned to call in artillery rather than attempt direct assaults. Soviet doctrine accepted that the first wave would be torn apart, with follow-on waves hopefully reaching the position before barrel changes. That worked for a while, but eventually Allied forces developed countermeasures. Artillery crews received training in suppressing machine gun nests. American forces found that the .50 caliber M2 Browning could outrange the MG34 and deliver devastating fire. Soviet forces employed specialized suppression teams armed with PTRS anti-tank rifles that could penetrate gun shields from distances where the MG34 couldn't effectively return fire. Then the cat and mouse game continued differently. German forces began employing the MG34 in unexpected roles. In urban combat, they discovered the weapon's high rate of fire could penetrate standard brick walls through sheer volume. MG34 teams learned to fire into buildings to suppress defenders even without direct sight. Bunkers on the Atlantic Wall featured MG34s on special traversing mechanisms, allowing them to sweep beaches with interlocking fire. Allied planners calculated that some beach sectors would be hit by fire from up to 6 different MG34 positions simultaneously. Here's the thing. Allied forces never developed a fully effective counter to the MG34 itself. Instead, they overwhelmed it with superior numbers, firepower, and logistics. By 1944, Allied artillery dominance meant identified machine gun positions would be obliterated within minutes. The weapon remained deadly effective until the moment it was destroyed. Despite being German, the MG34 saw wide distribution. Axis allies, including Italy, Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria, received significant numbers. Finland purchased MG34s directly and continued using them through the Cold War. After Germany's defeat, the MG34 found itself scattered across Europe in massive quantities. Various organizations, partisan groups, militias, and newly formed armies recovered abandoned German stockpiles. Yugoslavia manufactured a domestic copy designated the M53, and this version saw extensive service throughout the Yugoslav wars of the 1990s. The Chinese nationalists received captured MG34s from Soviet forces, and these appeared in the Chinese Civil War. Examples have appeared in Southeast Asian conflicts where captured ammunition stores kept them operational decades after production ceased. Around 350,000 MG34s were produced between 1935 and 1945. However, this was insufficient for German needs. The weapon's production difficulties led to development of the simplified MG42, which largely replaced it. Now we come to the dark reality that made the MG34 as much a curse as a blessing for soldiers who operated it. The first problem was staggering complexity. The MG34 contained over 200 individual parts requiring precision machining. In the sterile environment of a German factory, this was fine. In the mud of Russia, the sand of North Africa, and the cold of the Eastern Front, it was catastrophic. Even tiny amounts of dirt or debris could jam the intricate mechanisms. German machine gun crews spent hours each day maintaining their weapons. In North Africa, crews wrapped their MG34s in cloth and leather covers, desperately trying to keep sand out. We see in Soviet accounts how German prisoners would prioritize cleaning their machine guns over eating. But even obsessive maintenance couldn't always prevent malfunctions in harsh conditions. Then there was the heat problem. At 800 rounds per minute, the barrel reached temperatures that could cause ammunition to cook off. Rounds would fire spontaneously from heat alone. Doctrine called for barrel changes every 250 rounds, but in intense combat, this was often impossible. Crews reported barrels glowing cherry red, and in some cases barrels warped or burst from overheating. The barrel change process itself became terrifying under fire. The gunner had to expose himself to remove the glowing hot barrel. Even with the asbestos glove provided, crews frequently suffered burns. Those 5 seconds felt like an eternity. At least the MG34 evolved in quite an unexpected way in terms of operational burden. A typical crew consisted of 4 men carrying the weapon, tripod, spare barrels, tools, and approximately 2,000 rounds of ammunition. This totaled over 150 pounds of equipment, an exhausting load during rapid advances or grinding retreats. The ammunition consumption was staggering. A single MG34 could fire through 1,000 rounds in less than 2 minutes. German logistics struggled to keep units supplied, especially in Russia's vast distances. When supply lines were cut, MG34 crews found themselves rationing ammunition, which negated much of the weapon's suppressive advantage. The sound and muzzle blast created another dark reality. Without adequate hearing protection, machine gunners suffered permanent hearing damage. The muzzle blast created concussion effects in enclosed spaces. Crews reported disorientation, nosebleeds, and severe headaches. As for the MG34, in truly desperate situations, crews discovered terrible limitations. At Stalingrad, machine gun crews found themselves trapped with inadequate ammunition. The MG34's precision components began failing in -40-degree cold as lubricants froze and metal contracted. The psychological burden was equally dark. Being an MG34 gunner marked you as a priority target. Soviet doctrine specifically called for machine gun crews to be targeted by snipers and artillery before any assault. Casualty rates among MG34 crews far exceeded rifle infantry. The weapon's muzzle flash and noise gave away positions immediately. You see why so many Wehrmacht veterans had complicated feelings about the weapon. It was undeniably effective, but also a maintenance nightmare, an ammunition-devouring monster, and a magnet for enemy fire. The gunner's average life expectancy in heavy combat on the Eastern Front was measured in weeks, not months. The MG34's legacy is profound and contradictory. It established the general-purpose machine gun concept that every modern military has adopted. The American M60, Belgian MAG, and German MG42 all follow the fundamental principle the MG34 established. The weapon's technical sophistication proved to be both its greatest strength and critical weakness. German engineers created a masterpiece, but one too complex for the brutal reality of total war. The MG42 deliberately simplified many features, fewer parts, easier maintenance. The MG42 was Germany's acknowledgement that the MG34 demanded too much from soldiers and factories. This makes people wonder if there's a fundamental tension in weapons design: technical excellence versus practical battlefield necessity. The MG34 performed brilliantly when properly maintained by trained crews with adequate supply. It failed when any of those conditions disappeared, which in total war happened constantly. Yet it's fascinating how extensively the MG34 influenced modern weapons despite its flaws. Every contemporary general-purpose machine gun owes a conceptual debt to Heinrich Vollmer's design. The quick change barrel, belt feed system, and role as squad automatic weapon revolutionized infantry tactics permanently. As for the MG34, examples continue to appear in 21st century conflicts. They've been documented in Syria, Libya, and various African conflicts. With no retirement on the horizon for the last surviving examples, the MG34 remains a reminder that weapons designed in one era can haunt battlefields for generations. The dark side of operating the MG34 wasn't about its lethality. It was about the terrible burden it placed on young men assigned to carry, maintain, and fire it. A revolutionary weapon that changed warfare forever, yes, but also a 26-pound mechanical nightmare that demanded constant attention, consumed ammunition at an insatiable rate, and marked its operators for death. That's the dark reality the history books often gloss over.